So the first thing that we're going to talk about are parallelograms. Okay, so parallelograms, you open your little flip book there. You should see what I've got up here on the screen. We're going to talk about the properties of parallelograms first. Now, you probably know a lot of these things, but we're just going to formalize them and make sure that we're all on the same page. So the first one is the name of a parallelogram. Opposite sides are parallel. Opposite sides are parallel. Now, if we mark that on our picture, the symbol for parallel is we put a little arrow on the sides that are parallel to one another. So the left side and the right side are parallel to each other. So let's put one arrow there. The top side and the bottom side are also parallel. We're going to put two arrows because they're parallel to each other, but they're not parallel to the ones we just marked. Hello? Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So opposite sides are parallel. Left and right side, top and bottom. We put the different numbers of arrows there because they're different sets of parallel lines. All right. Opposite sides are also congruent. Congruent is a fancy way of saying that they are equal, or they have the same length or the same measure, but they're equal to one another. So our symbol there is we're going to put a tick mark on the sides that have the same length. So the left and the right side have the same length. Put one tick mark there. We'll put two tick marks on the top and the bottom. Because again, they're equal to each other, but they do not have the same length as the left side and the right side. So we have to put different numbers of tick marks on there. All right, another property, opposite angles are congruent. And the picture kind of gives this away. I mean, when you look at it, opposite means they are across from each other. Across from each other. And again, congruent means that they are equal. So let's put a name to these angles. Let's call this A, B, C, D. Okay, so opposite, the ones that are across from each other, A is equal to C. B is equal to D. That's an equals. Okay. Consecutive angles are supplementary. So let's talk about what those terms mean. Consecutive means that they are beside each other. Supplementary, what does that mean? They add to 180. Very good. Okay, add to 180. So when I'm talking consecutive angles, I'm talking A and B. A and B are beside each other. So A plus B equals 180. B and C are also beside each other. So B plus C equals 180. C plus B equals 180. And there's one more, D plus A or A plus D, however you want to look at it. They are consecutive. They are beside each other. Those are consecutive angles. So all of those angles, it depends on what information we're given or what we're asked about. It depends on which one we need. But consecutive angles, angles that are right beside each other in the parallelogram, are supplementary. Okay, and the last property that we have there is that diagonals bisect each other. We talked about the word bisect the other day. We know that that cuts it in half. Now, when you look at the diagonals of a parallelogram, clearly this diagonal from B to D is longer than the diagonal from A to C, but A to the middle and the middle to C are equal to each other. That diagonal is cut in half, so those pieces are equal to each other. And from D to the middle and from the middle to B, those are equal to each other. Any questions about any of the markings that I made or those statements? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, let's use them. So example number 1 there says if ABCD is a parallelogram, find each missing measure. So side AB, okay, we're looking for this side right here. It is opposite and parallel to side CD, so those have the same measure, so AB is also 9 meters long. Pretty simple, right? Okay, AC. AC is that diagonal that's going through the middle right there. It's not labeled. Well, the entire thing is not labeled. Part of it is, right? A to E is 11. So if A to E is 11, the whole thing A to C is 22. A to E is half of it, so the whole thing, 2 times 11 is 22. Okay? B to E. Okay, B to E is that half of that diagonal right there. The other half of the diagonal is labeled. It's labeled with 7, so B to E is the same. Right? It's also 7. Now, I don't have an example like this, but while we're talking about these segments, if I were to throw a variable in there, it doesn't change the property. Okay, if I had 7 plus x here instead of just 7, the property is still the same. B to E would be the same expression, or it would be equal to it. So just because a variable gets introduced, don't let that completely throw you off. The principles still remain the same. Okay, let's talk about the angles there. Angle BAD. Here's what I highly suggest that you do. When you're trying to figure out these angles, start at the first letter, trace to the second letter, and then trace to the last letter. That will clearly highlight what angle we are talking about. We are talking about that angle down there in that corner, that whole angle. What is marked is part of that angle. Now, we didn't say anything about these angles being bisected. Okay, none of our properties say anything about the angles being bisected, and I think it's pretty clear that those are not equal in measure. This is not the same as that angle right there. So let's put that one on the back burner for a second. Okay, let's see if we can find some more information that will give us a little bit more about that entire angle. Let's look at E. E says the measure of angle ADC. The measure of angle ADC. So we are talking about A to D to C. We're talking about this angle right here. Now, you might think that we're in kind of the same boat. There's not a whole lot of information there. And you'd be mostly true, okay? But does anybody else see that when we put this diagonal right here, we've created a triangle in this side of the parallelogram? From A to C to D, we've got a triangle. We've got the two of the three angles in that triangle. So how do we find that third one? Add them together and subtract from 180. Okay, so add them together, subtract from 180, because we know that there are 180 degrees in a triangle. So 27 plus 49, 180 minus 76, 104. Angle ABC is 104 degrees. Okay, angle ABD. A,